Hi everyone, it's Will, and we've got a very interesting 1907 diary entry today. Now, I think I've messed things up a little bit as far as the date, at least on my Facebook group, Grand Duke Dmitri. Diaries is the name of the Facebook group, and I think I've posted like the last 2 or 3 saying that it was the 7th of October when it was actually the 6th of October. The diary entry of the 6th of October we did in 2 parts, and I guess I got confused with that. This one we'll also have to do in 2 parts, the real 7th October 1907, because it's very long and complex, but in a good way. We get a lot of interesting information, things that I would not necessarily have guessed, but that make sense in retrospect. So it was a Sunday. Dmitri was in Moscow, and he had quite an exhausting day, I think. Well, I would have been exhausted, but of course I'm not 16 anymore. It's hard for me to imagine any 16-year-old taking any pleasure in this particular day. But yeah, it was part of his life, the activities of the day, and they didn't have cell phones back then, so he couldn't, be covertly trying to look at his phone in church. Anyway, I should dive into it, but first, because one of the issues that's also a little bit confusing is this issue of the helmet that we had before when Dmitri was going to meet his future brother-in-law at the train station in Moscow. There was some disagreement with Ella over the helmet, primarily over whether or not he was going to wear his parade uniform instead of just an ordinary uniform, and also about whether he was going to wear a helmet. And I thought it was Dmitri who who wanted to wear the helmet, and that it was Ella who didn't want him to wear the helmet. It was presented that way. Reading it, that was the impression that I got. But now I wonder if it was the opposite. Dmitri wanted to wear his dress uniform but didn't want to wear the helmet. I don't know. But anyway, I'll show again, I've already showed it several times, this picture of him holding the helmet in his Horse Guards parade uniform when he was quite little, as you can see. And this helmet is quite an affair. That would not be a comfortable thing to wear. So then we can contrast that to this photo of Dmitri. Originally, I was thinking that it was his parade uniform, but I see from the photo I just held up that no, it's not. So this is the uniform that he would have been wearing on a daily basis in Moscow. And you see here that he doesn't have the helmet. He just has, I don't know what you call those hats, just sort of a standard military hat, which he's holding in his hands. So let's dive into this. I got up at 8 o'clock because of the holiday. Then we had coffee in Tyotia's apartment with Vilgashka, of course. And then I sat around upstairs in my rooms and didn't do anything in particular. At 11 o'clock, I began to get dressed, and 15 minutes later, we went to the diocesan house for the meeting on the occasion of the opening of the Moscow branch of the Palestine Society. I was in my usual uniform with helmet, but I actually wore a hat because GM talked to Tyotia and convinced her that I always need to wear a uniform now. We went to the meeting after the liturgy, which dragged on for almost 4 hours. It was unbelievably stuffy and hot in the church, and it was, at the same time, so drafty in the corner where I was standing that my candle was incredibly smoky, and the wax streamed down like water and, of course, got on my helmet. Then there was a memorial service for Uncle, and before that, Father gave a speech about the society and its august founder, and then he called Uncle a crowned martyr, etc., which was unbearably obnoxious. When the memorial service ended, we went into another room where we had tea with all the bishops and the top city officials. Okay, so this day centered around the Orthodox Palestine Society is only just beginning. All right, so holiday. I should have. I can't remember what Orthodox holidays you have in October beyond my own name day, which is on the 26th of October, and one of my godchildren, his name day is maybe the 23rd. It's very close to mine. But, so there will be a liturgy for, definitely from my patron saint, who's Saint Demetrios of Thessaloniki. But, yeah, this, I think, it seems to be not a church holiday so much as they're doing a special liturgy for the opening of this Moscow branch of the Orthodox Palestine Society, and all of the bigwigs are there. The Metropolitan and the bishops, and yeah, okay, so they have the usual coffee in Tyotia's apartment, but this time they're joined by Vilgashka, which is Dmitri's nickname for Wilhelm, Prince Wilhelm of Sweden, his future brother-in-law, and I don't know if that nickname was unique to Dmitri, if he was the only one who used it, or if other people used it as well, and Maria used it as well. I'm not going to change my nickname from Will to Vilgashka because I like it, but absolutely nobody would be able to pronounce it that I know or remember it. Okay, so they go to the diocesan house. I don't know where that would be, but before they get to the actual meeting, they're going to go to church. And it's going to be quite a long service, 4 hours, and if you recall, people stand during Orthodox church services, and Dmitri was not about to sit, even if he didn't feel well. You remember the incident earlier on when he really didn't feel well. He had been having really bad stomach ache, but he was determined to stand because it would be embarrassing to take one of the chairs that were provided for people who couldn't stand. Okay, but returning to the subject of the helmet. Now this is confusing because he was in his usual uniform, so the uniform that we just saw in the picture of him, Maria, and Vilgashka, but he brought his helmet, but he was wearing a hat. And then we know that he actually brought the helmet because he has it in church, as we've seen. And apparently he was driving in an open carriage and wearing, based on the verbs he's using, I think he was wearing the helmet on the drive, but he was bringing the hat along because that would mainly be what he was wearing when he wasn't in church or in the carriage. And then there's this other line about how GM talked to Ella and convinced her that I always need to wear a uniform now. So that doesn't really seem to be related to the whole hat versus helmet versus parade uniform issue. And you would think it was Nicholas II himself, it was the emperor who had stipulated that from now on Dmitri was going to wear a uniform, even at home. So you think Tyotia, as much as she controls every aspect of her niece and nephew's lives, you would think she would, automatically honor Nicholas's desire, if we can read from this that she didn't that she didn't want Dmitri to wear a uniform, or that she only wanted him to wear it with this elaborate helmet. Anyway, your guess is as good as mine on what's going on here. But you recall that Dmitri and Ella had 2 fights the day before and were not really getting along well with each other at this time. And GM here intervenes, whatever the issue is, and is the one to convince her that she needs to change her mind on this particular topic. Okay, so Dmitri, Grand Duke or no Grand Duke, is standing in a stuffy, hot, drafty corner in the church through this long, long liturgy. Why on earth would a liturgy last almost 4 hours? Usually it would not, unless they were also there for Orthros, the pre-liturgy service. Okay, and then this thing happened that I guarantee you every Orthodox Christian is familiar with. From any service where you're holding a candle, and you don't typically hold a candle during the liturgy. This was obviously a special service because they would not have been holding a candle otherwise. You hold a candle during the Pascha service and during the Good Friday service and other services, but not during a typical Sunday liturgy. And in my church, Holy Trinity Cathedral in Portland, there are pews. It's, they've made that concession in the more modern Orthodox churches that there are pews, but you stand nonetheless. You only sit when you need to. And every year at Pascha, you have to be very careful about what you put beside you on the pew, because the people standing behind you and you yourself, with respect to the pew in front of you and also with your clothes, you tend to drip wax on things. And this precise phenomenon where the candle will start to smoke, there will be kind of this dark smoke, and then the wax will just pour down and it will get on everything. And so you really have to keep that in mind based on what you're going to wear and what you're going to put on the pew itself. And here Dmitri is unhappy because the candle wax got on his helmet. So would he have been holding his helmet in one hand and the candle in the other? Or would there have been a seat beside him that he could put it on, his helmet, that is? I don't know. But anyway, it was upsetting to him that wax got on his helmet. So the thing that I find the most interesting about this diary entry, the helmet issue aside, is what Dmitri's saying about Grand Duke Sergei. I mean, okay, so that Sergei wasn't the founder of the Orthodox Palestine Society. That was partially, he wasn't the sole founder, but Dmitri's uncle, whom we've met, his great uncle, Grand Duke Konstantin Konstantinovich, he was a co-founder of the Orthodox Palestine Society, and so this is the person that Father, i.e. the priest who served the liturgy, is giving a little speech about. So anytime you see the word August, you know that it applies to the imperial family, and it's the same word in Russian, Augustesha, and it always applies to an imperial family. So it wasn't one of the non-royal co-founders of the society, of which there were at least one. So that word is the tip-off. But what's more interesting is what follows with Uncle Sergei. So Uncle Sergei is called by this priest a crowned martyr, etc. We don't know what the etc. was, but Dmitri has a strongly negative reaction to that. It's unbearably obnoxious, he says. And why? He doesn't tell us, but is it because he knew the real Sergei and he didn't consider his uncle in any way a candidate for sainthood, even to be a passion bearer or a martyr? I don't know. I've got these two, I've shown these before, but I've got my two icons of the imperial family. This one is in good shape. This one that was chewed up on by a puppy rather extensively before I could discover it and get it away from him. And you can see they're different because in this one, the imperial family, it's just Nicholas and Alexandra and their children, and they're wearing traditional Byzantine and Muscovite clothing. And in this one, they're wearing the clothing that they would have worn at the time of the Second World War. So the girls are in their nursing uniforms. The Tsar and Alexei are in their military uniforms. And over here you have other members of the imperial family. You have Ella, and you have the Grand Dukes, and I don't see Grand Duke Sergei. I think these were only the members of the imperial family who were killed as a result of the revolution, and not Sergei or Alexander II or other members of the imperial family who were murdered earlier on. So anyway, you know, it's a bit controversial. There are some Orthodox churches. I mean, it's all one church, but you have the Moscow Patriarchate, you have the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, you have the Greek Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church, so on and so forth. And some of them recognize the sainthood, or in the case of most of the members of the imperial family, they're standing as passion bearers. But not all of them. And I've talked to one Romanov descendant, one now in her 90s, who said that she never, you know, she grew up hearing stories about the members of the imperial family from her mother and father, who knew them very well, and that, you know, it seemed like nonsense because they weren't. I mean, on one occasion, she'd had a chance to meet Saint John Maximovich, Saint John of Shanghai, whom her father was escorting when he was staying in London. And she said, you know, people would react so strongly to Saint John Maximovich, whose relics are in San Francisco, by the way, that, you know, one man came up to her or to her father on the subway, on the tube, and after they'd gotten off the train, and said, who is that man? He has such a remarkable presence. And, you know, you didn't have that with the members of the imperial family, although, to be fair, except for Ella, they are passion bearers, which is sort of not a full saint, not a saint. A passion bearer is slightly different. Well, as you can see, they have halos. And a crowned martyr. This is the term that this priest uses that Dmitri finds so obnoxious, unbearably obnoxious. So that's interesting, you know, and make of it what you will. As I say, this long event with the opening of the new Orthodox Palestine Society Moscow branch will continue. But then, back at home, we'll have some fun with Vilgashka and Maria, and we'll have a very surprising moment between Dmitri and Aunt Ella. So do come back for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.